Hello, hello, and welcome to another podcast episode of Overpowering Emotions, where I talk all things big emotions, emotion regulation, anxiety, and of course, resilience. We're on our journey of resilience. And today I am so excited. I have a special guest. We're going to be talking a lot about some of the things that I've been talking about since I started this podcast, and some things that I think people sometimes have a hard time getting their head around. So it's going to be fantastic. Cedric is the founder and director of Emotional Health Institute, EHI, a nonprofit organization committed to improving the quality of human life by tapping into the revolutionary technique of emotional resolution, which you'll hear him talk about EmRes. And this helps with trauma healing and emotional well-being. And we're going to be talking a lot about some of the pieces that are going to get in the way of helping ourselves, our children, teens develop, emotion regulation and resilience. So it's definitely an important episode. Thank you for being here. Hope you enjoy. Well, hello, Cedric. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, Caroline, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about being here and this conversation we're about to have.
I am very excited as well. Before we jump in, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone who's listening?
Sure. Well, my name is Cedric Bertelli. I'm the founder of the Emotional Health Institute. I founded the EHI in 2019. That's my second career, so to speak. First, in my professional life, I was working for the Ritz-Carlton hotels. I was working in restaurants and hotels. In 2009, I changed career and I decided to focus on emotions and specifically the somatic access to emotions. In 2019, myself, in collaboration with Dr. Jacques Fumex and other professionals, we developed a body of work called EmRes, or emotional resolution, based on how the brain constructs disruptive, debilitating emotional pattern. And this is what we do now. We train therapists, educators, coaches to do the EmRes body of work. And of course, I work with a lot of clients. I'm lucky to have a very busy practice. So I help people with their anxieties, their depression, their PTSD.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking a little bit more. But maybe we can look at how emotions are made first. Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and what I'm about to say is not something that I just pulled out from my back pocket. It's something that is well known and that has been really shared by Lisa Feldman Barrett out of Boston and Antonio Damasio as well in the world of neuroscience. We understand today how emotions are made, how debilitating emotions are made. So a few things. The first thing that we have to understand is that one of the main job of our subconscious brain, so to speak, is to predict. Our brain constantly predict based on past situations. We can see that, for example, if we're about to have an apple, for example, if we had an apple before we bite an apple, we already predict what experience we're about to have very precisely. In a nutshell, we don't need to eat the apple. We already know what's going to feel, how it's going to feel. We predict constantly. That's the first thing, which is very important. The second thing that we understand about debilitating emotional pattern is that at the origin of this pattern is always an instant of trauma. Now, what is a trauma? A trauma is an instant that holds too much stress, physical or emotional, for us to take on at the instant where we live it. So what might feel like a trauma to my 3 years old, for example, might feel like nothing to me at 43. So that's what a trauma is an instant that has too much stress for us to take on when we experience it. When we experience an instant of trauma, the same pattern happens in the brain all the time. Doesn't matter how old we are. In utero, when you're 40, it doesn't matter. When we experience an instant of trauma, there's an effect of dissociation. That means, in a nutshell, that the conscious brain, the cognitive mind, dissociate. Why? So that we don't suffer too much during this instant of trauma. Now, what is happening is when the cognitive mind dissociates, the subconscious takes over. So I'm going to share a couple numbers now. What you and I we are aware of right now, consciously, is about 2,000 bits of information managed at a beat at about 100 to 150 miles per hour. That's what we are cognitively aware of. 2,000 bits of information processed at a speed of about 100 to 150 miles per hour. Our subconscious at the exact same time has the potential to gather about 400 billion bits of information at a speed of about 150,000 miles per hour. These are the numbers from the Penn University, and they're from 2012, I believe. But if you go on the internet, you can see it's always the same ratio. In a way, the cognitive is like a marble, and the subconscious is like the Mount Everest. That's the ratio, more or less. So the cognitive mind has many roles, and one of them is to filter information. If we were bombarded by 400 billion bits of information per second, we would not be able to have this conversation now. We'll be overwhelmed by sensations. Now, what's happening is during time of dissociation, the cognitive is not here to filter information. So imagine our subconscious mind open like a huge vortex, gathering tons of information in a non-linear, non-logical way at a speed of 150,000 miles per hour. So there is an instant of trauma, dissociation, wow, a huge amount of information gathered. All of this is sensorial. What you smell, what you see, what you feel on your skin, all this information are purely sensorial. The subconscious is also recording what we're feeling in our body, what we're going to call later interoception, the physical sensations present in the body during this very instant of trauma. Am I being clear so far?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It makes sense to me, but I think other people will, because I talk about this and why like talk therapy isn't going to help because, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that. Yes, it does.
Absolutely. And so this happened, this vortex happened, and we gather all this information, sensorial information. Okay. Doesn't matter when this trauma happened again. It can be in utero, at birth, it doesn't matter. We can talk about resilience later. I know you talk a lot about resilience. I love the concept of resilience. Boris Cyrulnik which is the master of resilience, so to speak, in France, is a big influence on me. We can talk about resilience, but it doesn't matter when the trauma happens. Later on, it can be months, it can be years after, it can be decades after. When the body finds itself in a situation when the subconscious brain recognizes one or several elements that were present during a past trauma, the brain is going to instantly predict what physical sensations you're about to feel based on what was felt during this very specific trauma. So how do we know that we feel an emotion? We talk about that. How do we know that we feel an emotion? We know we feel an emotion because we're having physical sensations. There is interoception. That's how we know that we're angry, anxious, depressed, all of those. Huh? We know that we feel an emotion because we have a physical sensation. This physical sensation that we feel at the moment of an emotion were the very same sensation that we felt during a very specific instant of trauma. It is only an outdated prediction from the brain. So this is how the brain constructs emotion. The body finds itself in a situation when you recognize one or several elements that were present in a non-logical way during one past trauma. As soon as this is happening, the body generates an interoceptive prediction, letting us know that we're feeling an emotion, but really at the end, letting us know that we're about to be impacted by some kind of danger that hurt us very, very much at some point in our life. There's another thing that we understand about the brain and emotion is in our life, we constantly update predictions. That's how we learn. But when the prediction started from a trauma, it is very difficult to update. Actually, I shouldn't say it's very difficult. It is different in the way we need to update it because the sensations are so strong most of the time during an instant of emotion.
And this is why, just to take a step back quickly, I often will use an analogy why, if you were in a car accident and a Fleetwood Mac song was on the radio, next time you hear a Fleetwood Mac song, even 20 years later, you might start feeling panicky without ever knowing cognitively why, because that was one of those sensory inputs that you took, and now your subconscious is reacting. And so you're reliving those exact same physiological sensations as well. And so a lot of people say, I don't know why. Why am I I'm safe? There's nothing going on. Why am I feeling this?
That's completely right. Yep. Mm-hmm. And the why, at least in my way to see the emotional health work, the why in a way does not really matter.
Exactly.
Yeah. You don't feel well. Why? I'm sure there's a why. Let's take care of that first.
Right.
And then if we want to reflect, analyze, well, let's do it. But let's lift the weight of the pain, first. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's even so yes, the Fleetwood Mac example is excellent. And sometimes it's even a smell. Let's say you and I we meet. And when I meet you, wow, I feel tense in my body. I don't know why. The tension has nothing to do with who you are. Maybe you're wearing the same perfume than a teacher that used to bully me when I was 5 years old. And I don't even recognize the perfume, obviously. Same thing with maybe I meet a guy and he's the greatest guy on earth, but when I'm around him, I feel tense. I'm not going to develop a relationship with him. Maybe a smell remind me a kid that was bullying me when I was in high school or something like this. Our life is so shaped by the tension that we feel in our body. And a lot of these tensions, a lot of those gut feeling that we name them often, are based on instant of trauma as well.
Let's go in. I know I talk about this, but I think it's good for listeners who are paying attention right or listening in right now, why things like talk therapy is not enough and why learning emotion regulation skills, for example, can actually be detrimental to emotional resilience. We can talk about those.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. There's nothing against talk therapy. I have nothing against talk therapy. For some people, it is very useful, and I would say for some people, before resolving their emotional pain, they need to have some kind of understanding and being heard. So there's no problem there. Psychotherapy, therapy is having definitely a role and is very useful. Why it's not enough? Because you cannot think your way through emotions. The cognitive mind cannot reach the place of the brain where the emotions are trapped, where the emotional difficulties are trapped. So the only way, at least from many years of experience and study, the only way to resolve, to release a debilitating emotional pattern is to go through the body, to go through the body, to go to the root of the difficulty. In a way, to resolve a disruptive emotional pattern is extremely simple. One needs to be able to be with the interoceptive prediction without impacting it, without trying to control it, without having a therapist controlling it, or without trying to control the environment that might be creating it. To resolve disruptive emotional pattern is actually quite simple. We need to feel the physical sensations, or we need the body to go through this all interoceptive prediction that never lasts longer than 90 seconds, 90, to the end, because at the end of this prediction, the brain is anticipating to be hit with some kind of danger. At the end of the prediction, nothing happens. From this very instant, the emotion that we were feeling is going to be updated once and for all. So to go to the second part of your question, why emotional regulation can be detrimental? Because very early on, we learn to control our emotional difficulties. I mean, my daughter is 3 years old. They're already teaching her, to take some breaths. Then she comes home and I say, nope, you do nothing. She's a very confused child. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But we teach our kids at home, in school, to control their emotion. Take some breath, count. Yes, all these are useful coping mechanism. However, as you said, it do not allow the brain to resolve to update outdated prediction.
And I was so excited to talk to you about this because this is always what I'm talking. Well, first of all, kids, when they come in, they're like, please don't tell me to breathe because
Yeah,
everybody tells me to breathe and it doesn't work. And I'm like, I wouldn't ever because we're robbing them of opportunities to feel feelings. And people are always asking me to come do talks. What is the number one thing that kids need to learn? And I would say interoceptive awareness. We have this quick fix society. I feel a headache, immediately take an aspirin. I'm feeling sad, immediately go get an ice cream or watch my favorite show. Like we're trying to get rid of these feelings. And I think, and we're just perpetuating that this feels bad. And then we get sucked in and we're never actually learning how to. It's funny. I was just talking with somebody else. We don't have to do anything
No.
other than sit with it and be with it and be aware, right? And so this is, yeah, I'm was so excited to have you on because this is everything that I talk about. And sometimes I feel like it's just me banging my head against a wall because people are still teaching kids these strategies, these emotion regulation strategies, but not really getting at what it is that they need. So,
All habits die hard,
yeah,
you
absolutely.
know, and you have tons of bestsellers out there. The Body Keep the Score, How Emotions Are Made. I mean, they describe exactly the process that we just talked about now.
Yeah.
And at the end, in the conclusion, they give you mindfulness practices, breathing exercises, yoga, EMDR, which are great regulating tools. But I mean, come on, we know how to do it. As you said, we've got to do nothing. And for human beings, it's very difficult.
Mhm.
When we do EmRes session, our goal as a practitioner is to create just a space where the client can actually do nothing. Yes, the sensations are going to be uncomfortable at times. True. However, the sensations are not going to last. I call that the hero journey, right? We spend our life, the like nights trying to fight dragons, the dragons being our emotions. Whether we try to fight them, and that's anger and frustration, or we try to hide from them, to avoid them, or we try to control them. We will never be able to slay our dragons this way. The only way to slay our dragons is to jump inside of their mouth, to go inside of them, to let ourselves swallow by them. And from inside of the stomach, by just feeling the sensations until the end of this interoceptive prediction, we can slay the dragon. Ah, that's it. Often people tell me, well, what you're doing is called emotional resolution. So what? You don't feel any more emotions? No, it's not about that. It is about feeling the emotions that are congruent with our current reality. Most of our debilitating emotion come from past trauma, past experiences. We are being stolen. We our life is lacking texture, current texture, because we're reacting from past emotions. If we can only experience the emotion that are congruent with our current reality, life is so much richer and we're so much more present for what's happening.
Mhm. Yeah, which is so important. I often use the analogy of a snow globe, right? Anything that we try to do, we're just re-triggering that emotion or re-triggering the experience. And so we're never actually just letting that snow settle. So the only thing we need to do is just to put it down and let that snow settle. I keep hearing, yeah, buts, yeah, but what do we do, Caroline? Yeah, but what do we do? I'm like, that's it. You do nothing. Just stop talking, stop doing anything. And I think parents have a really hard time towards that too, right? They're trying to help, they're trying to make their kids feel better, but in the end, I think it is more of that sort of getting their kids to control their emotions or to, yeah, just not feel them at all. That's hard.
But often parents do that because they're trying to control their own pain, looking at the children suffer,
Mhm.
right? Most of the time, when we try to control our emotion or to make our children feel better, is because we are suffering, we are disturbed, we are hurting from seeing our children hurt. So we actually try to feel better ourselves by trying to control or teaching them to control their emotions. Here in the Bay Area, we taught about 200 teachers before the pandemic to do this work with the kids. Well, we tried teaching them. They technically knew how to do it. But the thing is, what we noticed is what we really try to communicate is do not wait for a child to have a tantrum to apply EmRes. No, We've got to be aware. And when a child feels a little anxious, a little shy, that's when you want to apply EmRes. Because when the child goes into a tantrum, it's too late. It's going to take 45 minutes for the kid to come. It's too late. And a tantrum is most of the time created by an accumulation of small emotions. What we notice is that the teachers were only trying to apply EmRes on the children when they were, or the class was disturbed by one child behavior. Then they were trying to apply it. So were they trying to take care of this kid? Yes, theoretically, yes. In a way, they were trying to control this child. So this child stopped being a bother, so to speak, for them or the class. Now, I'm not blaming the teachers because one teacher with 25 kids, how can they do that? How can they be aware of? So it's not about blaming the teacher. It's a whole system problem, I would say. But that's the same with parents. Most of the time, we are acting to control or to teach our children to control their emotion when we are disturbed, when we are hurt by their behavior and their pain.
So what should they be doing? What would be helpful for all the adults who have emotionally dysregulated children in their lives? What could they be doing? And then I want to talk about emotion resolution in a second too. We can dive into that a little bit. But in those moments, what should they be doing?
What they should be doing is take care of themselves first.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because if they are triggered and they try to take care of their children, it goes from taking care to controlling. If we try to help our children dealing with their emotion when we are triggers, we are controlling them in a way. Yeah. So the first thing for them to do is to take care of themselves. When they are triggered by their children, back off a little bit, go to your room, go to the bathroom if you can, go in a place where you feel pretty safe for just a second and feel what's going on in your body. What are the sensations? Where are your tension in your body? Resolve that and then come out and take care of the child. So that's the first step. Take care of yourself so you can be present.
Exactly. And what would you do to resolve? Well, it's probably everything that we've been talking about, but what would you say just for everyone?
So let's be very pragmatic, right? Because a lot of books talk about how to do it, but they stay theoretical, right? So I'm going to try to be very pragmatic and very simple. To resolve a disruptive emotional pattern, the best way to do it is to do it as individuals autonomously, is to do it when we feel triggered. It doesn't matter if we know why. It doesn't matter if we know what is the name of the emotion or not. It doesn't matter. I realize that I feel tense, that I'm not content. Okay. The first thing to do is to, when I feel the emotion, to close my eyes. So why to close my eyes? Because closing my eyes is going to show me if I'm safe. The first thing we study animals a lot at the Emotional Health Institute and their reaction to fear. The first thing a mammal does when they're afraid is they stop blinking. Same thing for us. Why is it important to close the eyes? Yes, okay, for an introspection, sure, but it's going to show you if you feel safe or not. If you close your eyes and you want to watch or you want to look around, your body doesn't feel safe. There's a difference between cognitively thinking that we're safe and the body feeling safe. There are some sessions, some self-session that I couldn't do in front of my daughter because I give you an example. Years ago, we used to fight for the corner of the couch to watch TV, fighting, right? Playfully. And one day she touched my face with her hand. She slapped my face. She didn't mean to, but from as long as I can remember, when my face is being touched, I used to rage. And when that happened, and she touched my face with her hand, I felt this wave of rage. Of course, I didn't do anything, but I sat next to her, and it's very known what I do in my family, right? We all do that in my family. So I sat and I tried to close my eyes, and I could not do it. I just wanted to look at her because at this very instant, this little girl was not my daughter anymore. She was a danger. She was a threat to my body. Remember, emotions do not make sense. From this instant, my body did not feel safe next to this little girl's body. That's it. Does it make sense? Absolutely not. But that's a fact. So what I did, I left from the couch, went to the bathroom, sat on the stool, and I closed my eyes. No problem. Then the next step is to feel sensations in the body. That's very important. at this point, when you close your eyes and you feel comfortable to close your eyes, you've got to feel the sensations in your body. You must feel at least two sensations at once. Not one sensation, at least two sensations at once. Why? Because if you only feel one sensation, your mind is going to wander. You've got to keep your cognitive busy in order to do nothing. You've got to feel two sensations at once or three sensations if you can. It's not easy to feel two sensations at once. It asks an intense attention. Feeling is an intense action. You've got to feel two sensations at once. And after that, as you said, you do nothing except that you keep on feeling intensely, actively, the physical sensations in your body as they are changing. They are going to change. They'll change intensity. They're going to change place in your body. Your only job is to feel attentively these physical sensations without trying to control them, without trying to feel better, without trying to understand them. These physical sensations will change, transform in the body in between 2 seconds and 90 seconds maximum. Once the sensations abate, open your eyes. It is enough to update an outdated prediction from the brain.
Amazing. That's great. And I love the two sensations. I usually have them focus on, where are you feeling it, naming what you feel. And then the third part, is it more on the left or the right? Because oftentimes it's, it's in the middle. Well, no, really think about, because I'm trying to keep their prefrontal cortex online, right? So that we're not getting. And so, but I love the idea of throwing at least two, because we often do, it might be your chest and your throat. And so being able to sit with that, I love that. So I imagine this is what your emotional resolution, that approach, is this what you're teaching clients?
Yes, so that's the base, I would say. That's the base when we teach what we call self-EmRes. To teach people how to do that. Of course, we go more in detail when we explain the neuroscience behind it, because human beings need to understand in order to believe. So we spend some time teaching the neuroscience and pragmatically how to resolve disruptive emotional pattern. Yes, the way that we just did, just we spend more time. Now, in an EmRes session is a bit different, because people come to see us to resolve patterns that they don't feel at the instant of the appointment. So what we do is we very specifically re-trigger the brain in order in a way we trick the brain to think that they're feeling that they're facing a situation that trigger this emotion. The body generate interoception, and we are supporting the client to go through this all interoceptive prediction without any type of action. And then we do more than that, of course, in sessions. We are going to resolve the emotion that we build over time, over emotion, because that's the thing about human beings, right? We have a fear, and then from this fear, we build another fear. For example, I don't know, something happened to me, and then I feel guilt about it, and then shame, and then anger, and then resentment, and then self-worth. So our job as EmRes practitioner is, as much as we can, within an hour of time, to resolve not only the emotion that the person is aware of, but all this emotion that has been built over time. The parasite's emotion, in a way.
Right, which is amazing. And to sort of trigger that interoceptive piece, would you do interoceptive exposure, or how would you do that?
The classic way to do it is we use a natural situation when they feel this emotion. But never a trauma, always something that happened currently in our life. We never talk about trauma in EmRes, never, because what's the point? Trauma healing is a good concept. However, it's only a concept, at least for me, because trauma happened. What can you do about it? Now, what we can do is resolve the wounds that this trauma created. And I've been doing this work for quite some time now. And I never had a client who had one traumatic event that they can identify, and only one pattern that came from that event. So the idea is really to take the time to understand what are the wounds created by this trauma, eventually, if we know what it is, and to resolve them one after another. And it makes sense that a traumatic event only do not create one debilitating pattern. If I'm being sexually abused for 5 minutes, I mean, do we really think there's going to be only one dissociation? No, I'm going to be dissociating 4, 5, 6, 7 times. I'm going to in and out, in and out. And each one of those dissociation has a potential to create a debilitating pattern in my life. That's also why we don't go into the trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So who can benefit from EmRes?
I guess I would say anybody, right? Everybody. Everybody, yes, everybody, because we all carry a debilitating emotional pattern. Some people with anxiety, with anger, with depression, with PTSD, complex PTSD, anybody, parents, teachers, yeah, anyone who are willing to look at their pattern and accept to resolve them.
Mhm. Okay. And I know I do have a lot of therapists who listen to my show as well. How can they learn about EmRes if they were interested in learning more?
Absolutely. So they can go on the website of the Emotional Health Institute. It's emres.com or emotionalhealthinstitute.org. It goes to the same place. And we offer curriculums where we teach EmRes and then advanced education with EmRes for the body as well. We develop a very, what can I say, a very, I was about to say powerful, but that's not the word I'm looking for. A very good process, I would say, for lack of better word, to resolve physical symptoms as well, like eczema, all this, all these psychosomatic symptoms that come in our life. So it's a very complete body of work, and yeah, go to the emotionalhealthinstitute.org and you can see the curriculums and we can teach you this work.
Okay, great. And just out of curiosity, how is this different from something like Dr. Levine's somatic experiencing or other somatic approaches like that?
Well, I think we cut through the chase. It wasn't designed by therapists at all. It was designed by researchers, physical therapists, gastroenterologists. So there is, how can I say that? All this psychotherapy theory that is very useful for therapists, we don't go into that. Our work is based on neuroscience and then I would say the philosophical work of, for example, Baruch Spinoza, Merleau-Ponty, all these philosophers that have been talking about the body for centuries, and everything is there. Everything is in their work. So it's a mix of neuroscience and I would say the wisdom of some specific philosophers.
Right.
So cutting through the chase, never talk about trauma. We don't try to recreate memories or change memories. None of that. It's very yeah, clean, clear, and effective. Not
Right.
and the other things such as Peter Levine work, it's all this is very effective as well, of course, but
Yeah.
it's different. Yeah.
Okay. Anything left unsaid? Anything else that you think is really important for parents or teachers or therapists to know before we sign off?
Wow. What can I say? As parents, we are carrying a lot of emotions that we are ashamed of often, and we don't want to talk about toward our kids sometimes or toward our partner. And because we're ashamed of them, we don't want to look at them. Uh, I think the first step is to accept our emotions without judging them so we can approach them and resolve them. So, first thing is, yes, you might have some emotions in you that you're ashamed of. It's irrelevant. Accept them so we can look at them and resolve them. Number one. Number two, it doesn't matter how long you've been carrying an emotional difficulty, it's irrelevant. It can be few months, it can be years, it's irrelevant. The brain constructs emotion always the same way, and we can resolve disruptive emotional patterns even if they're very old. For how long you've been carrying it, doesn't matter, it can be resolved. And people say, well, if I can resolve an emotion, and does it work all the time, EmRes? No, of course it doesn't work all the time. Nothing works all the time, but it works very often. People say, well, I've been carrying this trauma for 30 years, and you tell me that in just few sessions we can resolve it. Well, actually, yes. Does that take off any value to all the pain that you had for 30 years? No. But you suffered for 30 years, 20 years, 10 years. Why do you need to suffer ever longer? Because to prove that you suffered, yes, you suffered, no doubt, no doubt. It's not because the resolution can happen fast that you take off any value to your pain. To the contrary.
Mhm. Yeah, which is a good point. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I know that we could probably talk for hours, and everything that you've shared is in line with a lot of the things that I talk about. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom. For people who are listening right now, I will have everything, all the information that you have in the show notes. But how is the very best if people want to reach out? Where's the best place for them to find you?
The best place is cedricbertelli.com. It's my first and last name, and here you can, contact me pretty easily. So that's the best place to go.
Okay, amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me.